Hello everyone and welcome to our webinar, Why Are Strong Foundational Cybersecurity Skills Essential for Every IT Professional by our speaker, Roger Smith. I am Kainaz Baria and I will be your host for the day. Before we get started, we would like to go over a few house rules. For our attendees, the session will be in listen-only mode and will last for an hour, out of which the last 15 minutes will be dedicated to Q&A. If you have any questions during the webinar to the organizers or our speaker, kindly use the Q&A window. Also, if you face any audio-video challenges, please check your internet connection or you may log out and log in again. An important announcement for our audiences. We have initiated the CPE credit certificates for our participants, and to qualify for one, attendees are required to attend the entire webinar, that is the live webinar, and send an email to cybertalks@ecouncil.org, after which our team will issue the CPE certificate. Also, we would like to announce to our audiences about our special handouts. Take a screenshot of the running webinar and post it in your social media, that is LinkedIn or Twitter, tagging EC Council and hashtag Cybertalks. We will share free handouts to the first 10 audiences. As a commitment to closing the cybersecurity workforce gap by creating multi-domain cyber technicians, EC Council pledges $3.5 million towards CCT education and certification scholarships to certify approximately 10,000 cyber professionals ready to contribute to the industry.
Did you know that you can be part of the lucrative cybersecurity industry? Even top companies like Google, Microsoft, Amazon, IBM, Facebook, and Dell all hire cybersecurity professionals. The cybersecurity industry has a 0% unemployment rate. The average salary for an entry-level cybersecurity job is about $100,000 per year in the United States. Furthermore, you don't need to know coding and learn from your home, and you get a scholarship to kickstart your career. Apply now. EC Council is pledging a $3.5 million CCT scholarship for cybersecurity career starters. Scan the QR code on the screen to apply for the scholarship. Fill out the form.
If you want to know more, kindly visit our website given in the chat section. Our speaker for today's session is Roger Smith. He is the Director of Cared Manage IT Industry Fellow at Australian Defence Force Academy, Australian Cybersecurity Centre. Roger Smith helps managers, owners, board members, and C-level executives of NFPs, charities, associations, and SMEs develop and implement a proven and enhanced digital security action plan based on sound security strategies so they can sleep better at night. He believes that good business security is all about having an action, that is asset and risk management, control and standards, teams, integrated system, operational resilience, and next-gen innovation. Plan designed to protect the organization, enabling it to be resilient, adaptable, and profitable. Business security and cybersecurity is not putting up a firewall, implementing endpoint protection and the essential 8, walking away and hoping for the best. It is a whole business endeavor that follows the cybersecurity action plan that promotes and creates security in depth. Now, without any further delay, I would like to hand over the session to our speaker, Roger Smith.
Thank you very much. All right, my name is Roger. I am a CEO of an organisation in the ACT in Canberra in Australia. I've been in the industry since the late 80s when we used to have hard drives the size of mini tyres. I have run my own security business since 2011. I teach at the Australian Defence Force College. I've written 2 books. I'm in the process of writing my 3rd. It's just gone to the editor right now. And my whole focus is on improving an organization's security without breaking the bank, but also making sure that they are not a target of the bad guys. Now, you'll hear me mention the bad guys. I don't call cyber criminals hackers. Hackers are people who look for problems in the system. There are white hat hackers and black hat hackers, but if we just call them the bad guys, because that's who we're trying to stop from doing what they're doing. Let's just take a step back. In the old days, crime was relatively easy. If you go back 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, it was a single group of people or a family. You had something that they wanted, they came along and took it off you. When we started getting people into larger locations like towns and cities, we then had a centralized system where people would put their money, and then someone would come and then steal the money from them in such a way that they were now a couple of people or a gang who were stealing from a larger number of people. In 2014, we saw what was called the target hack. What it was a group of about 20 to 25 people who stole money from 134 million people. Now, the escalation has been astounding, and it's all because of what the digital environment can do. So how do the bad guys get to where they are? Okay, now, if you're a follower of just normal crime, there are three things that you need for a crime. You need motive, you need means, and you need opportunity. Motive is you have something that they want. Means they have the capability of taking that something off you. And the opportunity is they are in the same place as you, and they are going to either kill you or steal from you or whatever. In the digital world, it's a little bit different. The motive is you've got something. It doesn't matter what it is. You've got something that they want, and they are going to try and get it away from you. The means, you have a device. Every single person probably on this call has a device that is connected to the internet. Now, they can target that device in a number of ways. They can target it specifically, or they can target you by sending you an email, a spam email, or sending you to a website. And you have they have the opportunity because they are connected to the internet just like you, and that gives them all three capabilities of what the bad guys need. But why are they stealing from you? Well, one is money. Okay, everybody has access to money. We do most of our banking on our mobile devices. We have access to a number of websites that have access to money. We also have intellectual property. If you're working for someone, there's guaranteed to be intellectual property that is valuable to them, which makes it valuable to someone else. And you have a list of people who are part of that environment. So in other words, you might have a CRM, or you might have a system of keeping names and addresses. You may have an email system. Okay, so it means that they are after that type of capability as well. But if none of that is true, they could hijack your technology. So if, for instance, your home Wi-Fi can be turned into a targeting system to target someone else. So when it comes to the bad guys, they are very, very clever at what they do. And it becomes a problem because we don't think about what they do. But we also have a big problem with our attitude to the digital world. Since 1994, when Mr. Gates came up with Microsoft's Windows 3.1, we've all been told that the systems are secure, they are safe, they are easy to use, they are going to be a benefit to us. There's no knowledge about what can cause the problems that we are now seeing at the moment. So here are 5 areas where they are a problem. It will never happen to us. Well, why not? You have a device that's connected to the internet, you have access to something that they want, and there's a very good chance that they will try and get it off you. My service manager, my IT person, my Fred down the road who looks after my computers, he is looking after that capability. In a lot of places, when it comes to the difference between IT and cybersecurity, it is very, very noticeable. IT, keep the lights on, making sure everything works, make sure the revenue engine one works. Cybersecurity is about risk, understanding what the risks to your assets are, to your systems, to your capabilities, to your people, and then coming up with ways of mitigating that risk using cybersecurity components. Another one we hear often is too small to be a target. Again, why? Anybody. It doesn't matter who they are, whether that's a single mum and pup store on the corner who sells ice creams to the kids, all the way up to multinational organizations. Everybody is a target. And as I said before, we have nothing of value. Well, they value a lot of things that we don't consider. Things like if you get ransomware on your system, and although you have it has an impact time-wise, there is a very good chance that it's going to cause you major problems. And the problem with some people is they'll say we take security seriously, but they won't implement any security capabilities. They won't look at training their people. They won't look at putting the right technologies in place. They won't look at putting policies and procedures in place. So if they are saying that they are taking it seriously, but not investing in it, then really they have themselves to blame. But the trouble is cybercrime is now a huge business. They reckon it's $5 trillion per year. And the problem with the cybercrime as a business is there's competition and collaboration between rival gangs. Now, we all know, as in just the IT industry, that if I want to get a programmer that understands networking, that can install a printer, then there's a very good chance that I might need 3 different people to do that. Well, the cyber criminals are the same. There's nobody who knows how to host a black site or run up botnets or create a zombie network. Now, they're going to use capabilities of other organizations to come up with ways of doing that. The other thing about it is operations and automation. They are very good at doing what they do to come up with ways of protecting their way of or their income. They have development systems, they have research and development, they have marketing and sales, and in some cases you can actually jump on the phone or send an email on to a support company and ask them, can you help me set up my malware development system? And they will quite happily help you. Now, there's also 2 other areas when it comes to cybercrime. One is the random attacks. The random attacks, you get an email from your bank saying you need to reset your password. Now, that's probably gone out to 5 million people. Compare that to a targeted attack, which is they know who you are, they've done some research, they've done some investigation to find out who you are, they know you have access to certain levels of information or capabilities that they're interested in, they are going to target you. Now, the difference is very, very big. For everybody, everybody's a random target. But when it comes to specifics, you have to be someone who's in a organization, a high-end organization. You have to have a high net worth. So you are then something that they can use to target you in some way. Now, the problem with the cyber environment is we got an evolving landscape. Okay, there's new vulnerabilities found every single day, and if you have a look on some of the sites where they'll actually document vulnerabilities, you will see that they will come up regularly, like about every 2 or 3 minutes. Some software has a vulnerability that can be exploited, but we're also seeing artificial intelligence. We're seeing emails being written by ChatGPT for the specific capability of getting someone to open an email. We're also now seeing quantum computers coming into it who have or will have the capability of being able to break RSA encryption. And when that happens, then we're going to have a big problem. When it comes to protecting against these type of things. There are two significant differences between the bad guys and the good guys. The bad guys have one thing that the good guys don't have. The good guys have to be able to justify why they're spending so much time on protection. The bad guys can spend as much time as they like to come up with a way of compromising your system. So they have time on their side. We don't. I can't pay my guys to be developing a way to protect something that's going to take 3 weeks to actually do, and there's a chance that it's never going to be used against us anyway. Now, the other thing about the evolving landscape is some of the biggest hacks that we've actually seen where the bad guys have got in most cases, they've been inside the organization's network for a significant amount of time. Now, it was 120 days. It's now blown out to about 270 days. 3 months, well, try again, 9 months within your network, finding out what things are doing, finding out who's important, finding out who's making the decisions, finding out where all your data is, using that information to maybe manipulate it. So they're doing a reconnaissance on the system before they develop anything else. So how do they get in? Well, in most cases, it's phishing, spear phishing, that capability. There's also finding vulnerabilities on websites, finding vulnerabilities in things like SharePoint, Exchange, DNS, any of those capabilities. Common vulnerabilities, they can be accidental. So someone might have left a password in the wrong place. They might have used password 123 as their setup password, and no one's ever changed it. The problem is with all of these things is the moment it is discovered, there's always seems to be a knee-jerk reaction. Okay, oh shit, we've done something wrong. We need to do something now. And when it comes to fighting cybercrime, you really do have to be proactive, not reactive. There's no such thing as being ready for something if you haven't thought it through. The other thing about cybercrime is it's not just the person who's in charge of protecting the organization. Everybody is part of it. And one of the big problems that we find is C-suite executives or managers and owners who think they don't need to understand how the bad guys are doing the things that they do. So when a CEO comes to you and says, I need access to this, and you can turn around and go, well, that's not a good idea because it exposes the organization to this, this, and this. I want it. Make it happen. Okay, then you've got some problems. And that's the other thing about this. The people who are making those decisions and seeing that attack manifest itself, they will see change. They will see a problem developing. They will see that the computer is slow. It might switch off every now and then. It might hang. It might blue screen. So you need to have people who are going to look at that, have a checklist on their desk and go, oh, that's not normal. I better report that. So the moment you're doing that, you're now increasing the security of the organization significantly just by having people more aware of what the problems that come out of this are. When it comes to organizations, one of the things that you have to be very aware of is the reputation. Now, reputation literally can be damaged very, very quickly when it comes to a cyber attack. The real world consequences of a breach, financial, reputational, or personal, they all have an impact. But reputation is a real hard one to actually fix. So when it comes to how do you understand that, we just had a problem with Optus today when literally 10 million people couldn't use the phone system. That's a big problem, and that's going to have a really detrimental effect on the reputation of that organization. Excuse me. Critical infrastructure becoming a big thing. Those things that we take for granted. Power, water, traffic lights. Okay. Think about what would happen if someone compromised those. Now, in a large organization, critical infrastructure is not really thought about, but it's also now in Australia critical infrastructure takes in pharmacies, it takes in medical practices, hospitals. All of these have a governance component. And because they now have a governance component, those legal implications are now huge because they have to do something about it. Now, the only way you can do something about it is you need to put systems in place that are going to look at what's going on. And if you don't have those systems in place, something does happen, you can't go back past when it happened to find out really what happened. And that's very important when it comes to the forensics of a cyber attack. As I said before, IT is all about the revenue engine. Cyber is all about risk management and mitigation of risk. So what you are looking at is you have to work out what your risks are. Once you know what the risks are, you can then work out what the vulnerabilities to the organization, and you can now start making really, really big inroads into how you protect it. There are lots of tools available, and most of those tools are relatively easy to set up. It's the amount of data these tools that create that becomes the problem. Because what happens is they are delivered to an organization, millions and millions of event capabilities that you need to find a way of sorting out and making sure they're all going to work. So how do we do this? How do we stop, or how do we transition from IT to cyber? Now, a lot of you are already in the IT space. You are learning about computers. You're learning how RAM works. You're learning how software interacts with hardware. You're learning how one computer talks to another. And in a lot of cases, that knowledge is really important when it comes to cyber, because the capabilities of the systems themselves actually allow the bad guys to actually do the damage they do. If I send you a Word document, for instance, via email, and you receive that email and double click on the Word document, then automatically the computer system is now going to open Word or whatever other system is available for the system to actually read that Word document. Which means that if I know that there's a vulnerability in Word, and I can embed that vulnerability inside a document, and I can now send that document to you, and you double click on it and open up Word, that vulnerability is going to target the Word system on my computer, and it's then going to cause a problem. So how do we stop this from happening? And that's what we've got to get into our minds about, how the protection is really important about what we're going to be doing. The other thing about it is we need to have an understanding of what is changing in the world at the moment, in the digital world. As I said, AI is huge across the board. It's now been 12 months since the introduction of ChatGPT, and it has literally revolutionized business. But there are so many bad ways of using ChatGPT or AI or any other of those platforms that we have to be very aware of what can be done by them so that we can protect against some of the things that come along. Now, IT, when it comes to understanding your skill requirements. Now, if I want two computers to talk to each other, I need to understand how they are going to communicate. So I have IP. I got TCP, I got so the capability of the system to communicate. The addressing system of IP version 4 and IP version 6 allows me to have the knowledge of where things are. TCP, so I can have a connection between two computers. DNS, the address book of the internet. I don't know about you, but I don't think I can remember 4.3 billion addresses of IP addresses for a website. I'd rather be able to type in news.com than work out what the IP address is and then go there. And there's a very good chance when I get to that IP address, I won't be able to get to the website I want anyway, because there's 50 or 60 of them on that IP address. You need some soft skills. So things like understand other operating systems. You're probably going to get a lot of knowledge about Microsoft, because that is used by business to go forward. But if you have knowledge about Linux, if you have knowledge about Apple, then it's all going to be very good skills. And if anybody ever tells you that Linux and Apples cannot be hacked, they are lying to you, because they have just as many vulnerabilities as what Microsoft has, except they are not exploited to the level. But if you can find a vulnerability or have a documented way of actually interacting with a vulnerability on Apple or a Linux system, then the bad guys will pay you a lot of money for it. So that's another thing that comes up as well. In that transition from IT to cyber, that basic knowledge and those core competencies are really important. Because if you know how one computer talks to another and how those network components are going to be involved, or how that network environment is going to work, and how this computer finds resources on the network. So where's the printer? Where's the Active Directory? Where's the data stored? All of that means that you have a knowledge about how the system is going to work. Now, if you've got that knowledge, you can then use that knowledge to actually change the way you are going to interact with those systems. As I said, they talk to each other. And if they talk to each other, there's always a very good chance of being able to get that information. Now, in that capabilities, that one computer talking to another computer, there are a number of functions or capabilities. We've got the open source interconnect model. So in other words, all of those components that allow this piece of software to talk to this piece of software is really important, because it's actually going to give you an understanding of where things are. You understand the basics. We all know things like passwords, but passwords have to be unique. They have to be complex. They have to be more than 12 characters. We always recommend more than 14, but it's also very important that you understand how they are used. When it comes to things like default passwords, you just put a firewall in and it's got a default password or a default username. Cisco's a username, the administrator username straight out of the box, Cisco, okay? You need to change that. You need to think outside the box. You've got to be able to think so the bad guys can't see that information or get that information in some way. The essential 8, two-factor authentication, backups, understand how scripting works, make sure you've got a reduced number of administrators, make sure there's whitelisting in place if you can get around it, make sure you've hardened all your systems so that there's no bad stuff involved, or even good stuff. If you're not using it, get rid of it. It doesn't need to be on a system if you're not using it in any way. And make sure you're doing your updates. We've been banged into this in the last 2 or 3 years. Updates are really critical. Now, updates when they come out, operating system updates and application updates. Operating system updates come out as, especially on Microsoft, Patch Tuesday. Second Tuesday of every month, you'll get 100 to 2,000 updates that have to be applied to the system. Now, what these things are doing, when it comes to an update, someone has found a vulnerability. It may not be something that can take over a computer, but it might be something that causes a problem. So we've now got a vulnerability. Microsoft know about the vulnerability and now come up with a way of stopping that vulnerability from being targeted. So the bad guys have written a piece of malware that targets that vulnerability, gives them access to a computer. Microsoft comes along and patches that. So when you double click or go to a website that has that piece of malware that targets that vulnerability, it's no longer going to work, because you haven't got the vulnerability on that system anymore, because you've updated it, because you've patched it. Excuse me. The other thing about the updates is the applications. Remember, I said that when I send you a Word document and I know there's a vulnerability in Word, and you double click on Word and that vulnerability is now targeted by the script I put in that system. Well, if I've patched it, I've removed that capability. So yes, it may cause a problem, but it's not going to infect the computer. And there are other things like National Institute of Standards and Technology, the Cybersecurity Framework, ISO 27001. These are all capabilities, compliance requirements as you start looking at how cyber works in the organization. Because of the cyber skills, you are now going to be coming into a better way of making money. Okay, IT skills are great, but if you can transition into the cybersecurity space, then you need to have an understanding of not only how the IT works, but how the bad guys are going to target those IT capabilities. Dormant skills, so things like, as I said, the open system interconnect model, software development systems, how it's all done. You need to understand how supply chains work, so APIs, having one system talk to another without exposing the data in between, making sure it's secure, understanding the basics, understanding the essential 8. But when it comes to IT and cyber, there are some areas where you are going to overlap. An IT troubleshooter has a better chance of finding out why something has happened in the cyberspace because they have a better understanding of what the bad guys have actually targeted. Incident response, actually having, and if you worked on a help desk, you'll understand how incident response works along the lines of someone rings you up, I've got a problem, please fix it, and how you fix that is very important. There's a couple of things about responses is very important. You have to be very aware of what the bad guys are capable of. And in that incident response component, making sure that you're not creating a bigger problem by rushing over to a computer and logging on as the administrator, because that can cause major problems. We also have forensics capabilities, but forensics only work if you've done the proactive stuff beforehand. If you've put those systems in place that are going to collect the information and store that information in some way that can be read. It shows you the administrator account was attempted to be used on this computer 55 times in a minute. Okay, that is really important. But if you're not collecting that information and you're using things like circular logging, then there's a very good chance that by the time you get to it, it's already been overwritten. So those are very important components. Penetration testers are a unique brand of people who are very good at doing what the bad guys are capable of doing. They are interested in breaking things to a level of what the bad guys can do. They are the people that come along and go, what happens if I do this? Or what happens if I put this information into a text field of this CRM product that we've just developed? That's what penetration testers do. They are looking for the same things that the bad guys are looking for all of the time. So the top fundamental skills you need: having an understanding of network fundamentals. So TCP, UDP, IP version 4, IP version 6, DNS, all of those systems that are really important for one computer to talk to another. Understand how operating systems work, how, excuse me, how this operating system talks to that one, how that information is going to be moved around. Programming and scripting. Can you write a script for an organization that is going to do, I don't know, shut down the computer at 9 o'clock at night because there's no need for them to be left on? Basic security concepts, things like understanding how the bad guys get in, how you could trade your people up, understand how cryptography works. If you can encrypt your data at rest while it's on a system, then that's good. You also need to have an understanding of web technologies, how they work, how your browser works and makes that website come to you. A lot of web technologies are now being used in the cloud-based systems. So in other words, if you want to get to a CRM, for instance, it's going to be a URL. You'll get in, you'll log in, two-factor authentication, and make it all work. But these are the fundamental skills, IT skills that you need. And then you can go into the IT pro that needs to understand security. So cyber, firewalls, how do you set it up? How do you set up monitoring? How do you use IDS and IPS to actually change the rules on firewalls? So in other words, if you have something happen and it sees something happen, then the IPS, intrusion detection system, and intrusion protection systems, they will make decisions using machine learning or an understanding of what's going on and do something about it by writing a rule into the firewall. Endpoint protection, your antivirus, okay, still a big thing. Encryption, as I said before, if it's on a system at rest, it needs to be encrypted, especially if it's PII data, medical data, information about people, all of that. Multi-factor authentication, that third layer of security. Excuse me. Third layer of security, username, password, and something you own. Okay, whether that's a dongle or that's a authentication app on your phone, even if it's only SMS, it doesn't matter as long as there's that third level of security. If you want to separate your networks and capabilities, that makes it a lot harder for the bad guys to get around because your critical data might be in one place, a firewall between that and the other networks, you separate it out. And also have a comprehensive patch management system in place that makes it hard for the bad guys to get a foothold on the system. You're never going to stop all of them. And anybody who tells you that they're going to stop all the attacks, they are lying to you. The other thing about cyber is it's a mindset. One of the things about risk is learning how you make a decision about what is exposed. So when you sit there and go, what happens if I do this? We have an exercise process. We'll sit there and we'll do tabletop exercises. We'll get the right people in the right room, give them a scenario and go, okay, this is what has happened. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do? What have you in place that can stop that from happening? Balancing technical capabilities with your soft skills, being able to talk to people, especially being able to put complex ideas and systems into everyday language that the CEO and the C-suite executives can understand. If you know your stuff, you can do this. If you know how a system is going to actually help protect it, when you start talking about revenue and when you start talking about the impact on the systems, the impact on the income, all of this becomes really second nature when you're talking to people about how are we going to protect that systems. Excuse me. Show some situational leadership. You are the person who knows this stuff. So you have to be able to tell people what is going on. And that's the other thing. If you are in the situation of a breach, then communication is absolutely key because they are going to be running around scared. They're going to be literally like chickens with their heads cut off. What are we going to do? Why didn't we do X? Why didn't we do Y? And if you have the knowledge and the understanding and you have the systems in place and the capabilities, then you can actually alleviate a lot of their pain by literally saying, well, yes, this is a problem, but these are the things that we've got in place, and that protects you in a large number of ways. When it comes to this area, we have, you have to educate yourself. Yes, there are lots of capabilities, but do not just go down the certification role. Certifications are great, but they don't, a lot of the people that we use have a lot of real world experience. And you need to make some decisions about where you want to be in 6 months, where you want to be in 12 months, where you want to be in 3 years, what part of the industry do you want to get into? Build your own roadmap. Make sure that you are in a place where you are going to be comfortable. You don't want to burn yourself out. You don't want to have these capabilities. If you listen to some of the people on the internet, if you follow LinkedIn, there are a large number of people that you will see in waves of they're doing too much, they're burning themselves out, they're talking about it, and you need to be able to step back and go, okay, I need a break, I need to walk away from some of this stuff, I've got to delegate to other people and make sure that other people are actually in a position to be able to help. In addition to that, resources, yeah, use the internet. Okay, Udemy as a training system. There's LinkedIn Learning is another free resource that's available, and any of these will give you a better understanding of what's actually going on and how you can use your IT skills to upskill yourself in the cyberspace. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Roger Smith, for an informative session, and our attendees share the same sentiments. Today's session is in sync with EC Council's Essential Series certification. Thanks to emerging technologies like cloud computing, the Internet of Things, remote access, and blockchain, businesses have become more cost-effective and efficient. However, these developments have also created new attack surfaces for malicious attackers. As the cyber threat landscape evolves, early career cyber professionals need to develop proficiency in multidimensional skills to detect and thwart cyber attacks. The Essential series from EC Council helps you gain a solid foundation in network defense, ethical hacking, and digital forensic. Develop solid skills and gain a competitive edge with our free entry-level courses designed by industry experts. Over 40 hours of self-paced learning, 30 plus lab activities, 2,500 plus page ebook, acquire most in-demand cybersecurity skills designed for early career cyber professionals. If you're interested to know more, kindly take part in the poll that will be conducted now. Let us know your preferred mode of training and we will reach out to you. So Roger Smith, shall we start with the Q&A?
Sure can.
Sure. First one. How do we obtain services like hacking as a service or ransomware as a service?
There are a number of websites you can go to. It's really a case of why do you need them? You've got to think outside the box when it comes to using these type of capabilities. For the simple fact, you've got to remember they're being run by people who are not totally honest with what they do. If you're using a hacking for service capability, then you've got to be able to separate the ethics of why you are doing it from why you need it.
Thank you. And we'll proceed to the next question. How do we do the quantitative risk management? Are there any specific frameworks available to follow up?
When it comes to risk management, yes, there are a number of very, very comprehensive frameworks that you can use. I can't remember them straight off the bat, but they will give you an understanding of what risks are. The thing you've got to remember is when it comes to risks to an organization, they're not just things that we can think of. They're going to, and one of the things that we make sure of when we're doing a risk analysis of an organization, it's not only the CEO, it's not only the managers, it's also the people at the bottom, the people who are doing the hard work, because they see risks that management will never see. They will see, or they will attach a problem to a risk, and they will actually work out how they can avoid that risk in a number of ways that may not be known to hierarchy. So when it comes to a risk assessment, then it's a case of just think what happens in the organization. How can those risks be mitigated? How can we reduce them? How can we make sure that they're not there? How do we transfer them to other people? Can we put a warranty in place? Can we get insurance? All of those types of things. But the capability of the risks is taking what you think is a risk and then running it through a matrix, and that'll give you an indication. The risks usually go from low to extreme. Anything that's high and extreme needs to have something done about it. Anything that is medium low needs to have not so much something done, but it has to be registered as this is a risk and we are going to ignore it, or we're going to change the way we do business. So
Thank you. And the next one, how can we secure from AI not turning against us if some hacker wants to use AI to hack us and lock down the system?
AI is only as good as the person who's putting the information into it. At the moment, it's still not self-aware. So in other words, if the person is putting the right information into it, he's going to get into your system anyway. It's just going to be a lot easier for him to do it using AI. The problem is with AI at the moment is we have a we have a separation of capabilities. Okay, we still think that it's going to be the be all and end all of the world. It's still in its infants. I was actually talking to a couple of students yesterday, and one of the things about AI is, if you think about humans, AI is about on the scale of a 5-year-old at the moment. Yes, they know how to write and they know how to do things, but it depends on the information that you put into that to get that response out of the artificial intelligence. If you are putting the wrong information in, you're going to get the wrong information out. Now, we've already been proven or shown that if you can confuse AI relatively easily, you can get the wrong information out of AI. You can use the wrong data to come up with a concept that is incorrect. So until those problems are ironed out, probably in the next 2 or 3 years, we are going to be relatively safe from an AI hacking into a system. But things like DARPA in the States have AI systems that are not only attacking but defending against attacks. And very soon we'll probably be in the situation where the good guys will have AI and the bad guys will have AI, and we'll see what happens. But at the moment, it's not that big a deal. Yes, they make things cleaner and they make things more capable, but they're not that big a problem at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Next one. How
Sorry.
can one, that's okay. You can have water if you want, sir.
No, it's fine.
Okay. How can one achieve security for individuals? Either compliance-based or risk-based approach is best, and why?
Right. When it comes to individuals, you've got to remember that you are now the person who's doing the protecting. There's no fallback. There's no other person in the loop. So a lot of the things that you're going to have to do is going to be reliant on you and reliant on you thinking through the situation. What we find with individuals is if you start adhering to the Essential 8, so those Essential 8 components, two-factor authentication, updates, backups, scripting, minimize administrators, whitelisting and hardening. If you think about your systems themselves and you start applying those components to it, then you also reduce the chance of someone hacking into your system. But that also applies to things like your home internet connection or your mobile device. Having things like endpoint protection in place, make sure that, and not a free one, you need to pay for it, which is a problem in itself. But you need to have that, I suppose, sense of security by implementing these types of strategies, and that allows you to protect your own systems. But you can't, if you've only got a computer at home, you're not going to put major systems in place because A, it's going to be expensive, unless of course you're in the field. And if you're in the field and if you're in cybersecurity, you need to have your own test environment, okay? And that includes having a virtual environment of an attacker and a defender and finding out how it all works. What happens if I do put a firewall in there? Can I stop it from happening? Can I send it email? Can I do all of those sort of things? By having that, if you're in the industry, then you are going to learn significance. And from that significant learning, you'll actually come up with scenarios that may have an impact outside of who you are. So in other words, if you're working for someone, I did this last night and it showed that we need to tighten up here. By doing that, you're actually making yourself very, very approachable when it comes to security for an organization. But when it comes to personal, Essential 8, do the basics, educate yourself, and that's probably the most important.
That's good. Thank you. The next one. Sir, you spoke about cybersecurity being proactive and not reactive. How
Yes.
does this apply to zero-day attacks? Attackers are always a step ahead trying to find ways on how to break into systems, and the fact that not all organizations have the capacity to employ the services of pen testers. How organizations can prevent zero-day attacks?
Wow. Okay, two things. When it comes to pen testing, it's no use spending money on a pen test unless you've done the proactive stuff to start off with. Because if you do a pen test and you've done none of the preparation before, so you've paid $10,000 for an organization to have a pen test done on an organization, and you haven't implemented a decent firewall, intrusion detection, intrusion detection systems, excuse me, if you haven't implemented a SIEM of some sort, something that's collecting information, aggregating it, and giving you an answer. When a pen tester attacks your system, you have no knowledge about what they're doing. So they're going to win. They're going to win every time, which also means that the bad guys are going to win all the time. So unless you've done that coming forward, then a pen test is a waste of time. But if you've done all that and you have got the SIEM and the capability and the SOC and the responses and the breach controls and everything else, then when you do a pen test, you're not only just protecting the organization, but what you're doing is you're delivering the capability of your guys to actually see what is happening. So your pen test will turn around and go, yeah, we compromised your system by doing this, this, and this, and your defending people can turn around and say, well, actually you didn't. You got into a honeycomb, and the information you got out there is 25 years old, and it didn't matter whether you stole it or not. Those are the capabilities what the bad guys are capable of. So by having a pen test, yeah, make sure you got the systems in place. What was the first part of that question? Sorry.
The first part is, how does this apply to zero-day attacks?
Oh, yes. Zero-day attacks are, if anybody doesn't know, 0 days are an undiscovered vulnerability that is going to cause a problem. But yes, we can't we can't defend against a zero-day attack. But what we can do is, going back to the proactive capability, is all of these what-if questions that we've been asking. What happens if this happens? Okay, yeah, a vulnerability that's a zero-day will allow someone to target a system. Now, if they can get into that system and then install something else, you need to have a system in place that's going to pick up not so much the 0 day, but it's going to pick up the components of what they're doing when they get inside the network. Okay, so they're going to move around, they're going to install applications, they're going to attempt to find out what the usernames and passwords are, they're going to try and find your encryption keys. All of that information, if you have got the systems in place, the vulnerability is going to be there. Yeah, it will get patched eventually, but your internal systems are already in place because you've been proactive. If you are proactively looking at what happens if this gets compromised, not so much that we can stop them from compromising it, but what happens when they get into the network. And that then becomes that security in depth component. If you haven't got that, then you've got a few problems, because the vulnerability, or the 0 day vulnerability, will then allow access to everything across the board, and that's very bad.
Thank you. And we'll take the last question.
Yep.
Which course do I start with as a beginner in order to become a professional in cybersecurity expert?
Basic things like networking, security plus, that'll give you an understanding. As I said before, if you are an IT person and you have the skills with IP, TCP, UDP, DNS, then you are already understanding how the bad guys actually work. And by doing that, you then get better. Now, I don't know some of the EC Council's capabilities and their courses, but the basic ones that cover networking capabilities are going to be your best friend when it comes to cyber. As I said, I've been in this industry since the 80s. So, and I was taught how that communication capability of what happens on a network is so vital for even today's world. If we didn't have that information, and most people don't realize that my mobile phone talks to another mobile phone using similar technologies from 25 years ago. Okay, so if I know how that works, then I'm never going to be out of a job, because that information is going to be there readily in my brain and I'm going to be able to use it.
Thank you so much. Thank you once again to our wonderful speaker, Roger Smith, for answering those questions and for the great presentation and the knowledge shared to our global audiences. It was a pleasure to have you with us, and we're looking forward to more and more sessions with you. Before we conclude the webinar, thank you, sir. Before we conclude the webinar, would you like to give a small message to our audiences?
When it comes to that differentiation between IT and security, if you can learn, when I was at about 4 years ago, when I was at ADFA, we had someone who signed up for a master's degree in cyber that didn't understand how one computer talked to another. That basic knowledge is really, really important when you start talking about cybersecurity, because if you don't understand how one system talks to another, then you can't use that knowledge to actually find out what the bad guys are doing and what the good guys are doing, and you need to be able to do that. The best cyber people that we've ever come across are always people who have come out of the industry, the IT industry, because they have that fundamental knowledge about the most important parts of computers, which is how do they talk, how do they work, what do they do. And if you understand that, then it doesn't matter whether you're in IT or cyber, you are going to be better at what you do.
Thank you so much for the message to our audiences. Before we end the session, I would like to announce our next Cyber Talk session, the CISO's Guide to Cyber Resilience, Best Practices and Pitfalls to Avoid, which is scheduled for November 10th, 2023. This is an expert presentation by Mark Huff, Chief Security Officer at Data Bank Holdings Limited. To register for this session, please do visit our website, that is www.ecouncil.org/cybersecurity-exchange. The link is given in the chat section. Hope to see you all on November 10th. With this, we end the session. You may now disconnect your lines. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Roger.